It's Wednesday, it's the 2nd of July. I'm Moon Gun-young. This is ARIRANG News live from Seoul. Our top stories today. A day before Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to South Korea, North Korea fires 2 short-range projectiles into waters off its east coast. Now, contrasting views of parties with different interests to Tokyo's historic shift in military policy, that is. Washington welcomes the move while South Korea and China are concerned. And the Korean won is flirting around a 6-year high, even briefly touching an intraday high of 1,009 as expansive manufacturing data from the U.S. and China fueled optimism about global economic conditions. We'll have those stories and more, but first, right here in Korea. Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping is due for a 2-day state visit to South Korea on Thursday. Our Yoo Li-an takes us through some of the key issues topping President Xi's visits, from efforts to curb North Korea's nuclear ambitions and Japan's history provocations to Seoul and Beijing's free trade negotiations.
Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Seoul this week sends a strong message to the North Korean leadership. It's practically the first time a Chinese leader, after taking office, is coming to South Korea before paying a visit to Beijing's traditional ally, North Korea. When the leaders of South Korea and China meet on Thursday, they will seek ways to substantially develop their strategic cooperative partnership with a strong focus on the North Korea nuclear issue.
Pushing for the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula and maintaining peace and stability on the peninsula and solving issues on the peninsula through peaceful means have always been the Chinese government's established policy.
While Beijing will likely oppose recognizing North Korea as a nuclear weapon state, it's uncertain whether the two leaders will highlight more than denuclearizing the Korean peninsula in an expected joint statement following the summit. The South Korean presidential office says Presidents Park and Xi will also discuss reviving the six-nation denuclearization dialogue with Pyongyang. Also topping the agenda for the meeting of the two presidents will be the North's cozying up with Japan as of late, Tokyo's backtracking on a historical apology to Seoul, and Japan's attempts to expand its military presence.
It's only natural the two leaders talk about Japan. They will discuss Japan's push to deny historical facts.
Beijing, involved in a bitter territorial dispute with Tokyo, is expected to seek greater cooperation with Seoul on historical issues. On the economic front, the leaders of Korea and China will agree to speed up negotiations for their free trade agreement and appeal to businessmen from both sides at an investors' forum on Friday. Yoo Li-an, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, North Korea fired another 2 short-range projectiles from its east coast earlier this morning, its 3rd launch in less than a week. Well, officials from South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said that the rockets were fired from a site near Wonsan, flew about 180 kilometers, and are believed to have landed in North Korea's territorial waters. The South Korean military, meanwhile, said it's maintaining its vigilance against additional launches. A military officer who wished to remain anonymous said that the North may be trying to gain attention ahead of Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Seoul tomorrow. Now, he added that the launch could also be a response to South Korea's rejection on Tuesday of North Korea's proposal to end hostile acts. Now, there were mixed reactions to Tokyo's decision to permit itself a greater military role in Asia. The U.S. government says it welcomes the Abe administration's move to unshackle itself from Japan's decades-long war-renouncing constitution. While China, on the other hand, which, like Korea, has painful memories of Japan's past military aggression, has expressed its concerns. Here's our Park Ji-won.
China's foreign ministry has expressed concerns over the Abe administration's move, saying it has taken an unprecedented measure that greatly changes Japan's military security policies.
We can't help thinking Japan would change the path of peaceful development that it has stuck to since the end of World War II. We also have noticed that Tokyo's attempt to exercise a right to collective self-defense has been met by strong opposition within Japan.
In a statement Tuesday, U.S. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel said it was an important step for Japan to take a positive role in international security cooperation efforts. The White House also welcomed the move.
We would make clear is that we believe that this is good potentially for our alliance.
Analysts say a stronger Japanese role serves the U.S. interests in the region as it should contain China's rising influence in Northeast Asia. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Abe's reinterpretation of the country's pacifist constitution has gone down badly with many inside Japan. Japan's opposition blocs and protesters are demanding that Abe and the ruling coalition go back on their decision. They say the public was not consulted with on an issue that not only changes the pacifist nature of the constitution, but also affects the future of the Japanese people. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Well, amidst all this, top military commanders from South Korea, the U.S. and Japan met for talks in Hawaii on Tuesday local time, an occasion marking their first in-person meeting. Well, in a joint statement released by Admiral Choi Yoon-hee, General Martin Dempsey, and General Shigeru Iwasaki following the Trilateral meeting, the three officers said they had exchanged views on North Korea's nuclear program. Now, an official at South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the three countries need to work on their military cooperation to counter a scenario in which North Korea's nuclear and missile threats become a reality. The three commanders met on the sidelines of the biannual Rim of the Pacific, or RIMPAC, multinational naval exercise. South Korea's new defense minister Han Min-gu has vowed that Seoul will immediately and forcefully respond to any further North Korean provocations. The defense chief made the remarks Tuesday during a visit to Yeonpyeong-do and Baekmyeong-do Islands, which are islands located just south of the de facto western sea border between the two Koreas. Now, Han said the military has orders to launch immediate counterattacks in case of any provocations, not only to the source of the provocation, but also to supporting forces as well as military commanders. He stressed that if North Korea ever attempted another provocation like its shelling on Yeonpyeong-do Island, South Korea will effectively retaliate against the North. North Korea's artillery attack on Yeonpyeong-do Island in November 2010 killed 4 South Koreans, including 2 civilians. Now, school textbooks in the U.S. state of Virginia are now required to use 2 names for the body of water between Korea and Japan. And all of this is thanks to a new law that's expected to have a national impact. Here's our Connie Kim.
A new law that requires school textbooks in Virginia to use the name EC alongside Sea of Japan for the body of water between Korea and Japan went into effect on Tuesday. Now, this means that schools will now be required to use textbooks and maps that have both names. However, because the state reviews school texts every 7 years, and with the new review set for 2016, new textbooks using both names may not appear until 2017. Yet, it may not even take that long for the change to be implemented. The organization behind the name change campaign, Voice of Korean Americans, says some publishing firms have already started adding the name to their textbooks. And about 60% of textbooks in Virginia already have both names after guidelines encouraging the use of the EC name were distributed last year. The Virginia law is expected to have a broad impact as most U.S. publishing firms supply the same textbooks to schools nationwide. Virginia is the first state to pass such a law, and the landmark legislation passed through the Virginia House of Delegates in February, despite efforts by Japan to lobby against it. Many Koreans see the name Sea of Japan as a cruel reminder of Japan's imperialist past, as the name was registered when Korea was under Japanese colonial rule. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Moon Gon-young live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market. For the dual use of the Korean name EC and Japanese name Sea of Japan in school textbooks in the state of Virginia. Now, the Korean won is trading at its highest level against the U.S. dollar in nearly 6 years on this Wednesday, with the currency rising to over 1,010 won in intraday trading. The local currency was trading at 1,009.7 won against the greenback as of 1:30 p.m. Korea time, which is about 40 minutes ago. And it's the first time it has breached the 1,010 level since July 2008. Analysts attribute the won's appreciation to an all-time high on the New York Stock Exchange overnight, which was in turn buoyed by economic data out of the U.S. and China showing expansion in the manufacturing sectors of both countries in June. However, latest economic indicators released here in Korea are making many question whether the economy is truly on track to recovery. And many experts are urging the government to implement both short and long-term measures to spur growth and reinvigorate domestic demand amid fear that the economy might fall into a low-growth trap. Here's our Hwang Ji-hye with this report.
Earlier hopes the Korean economy will settle into a firm period of recovery were dashed by April's ferry disaster, which made a massive dent in domestic spending. As a result, private institutions have slashed their growth forecasts. Now, economists are asking a new economic team to be led by the incoming finance minister to use all the fiscal and monetary policies at their disposal to spur growth. They say the government should pump money into the economy to help it escape from a low-growth trap, although that could lead to a fiscal deficit. They say a cut to the key interest rate could also be an option if the pace of recovery continues to remain sluggish. While Korea's traditional growth engine is exports, analysts say the government should lay out measures to boost domestic demand and improve the livelihoods of ordinary people. Some recent economic data has left some questioning whether Korea is truly in a recovery phase. The nation's output across all industries fell for 2 straight months in May, while the output in the manufacturing and mining sector dropped 2.7% last month from a month ago. That marked the biggest drop since December 2008 at the height of the global financial crisis. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Well, it seems that government policies here in Korea encouraging women to re-enter the workforce are on the right track and apparently are making an impact. New data shows the economic participation rate for women in Korea rose to a 7-year high last year. Here's our Kim Ji-yeon.
For the first time in 7 years, the employment rate for women in Korea surpassed the 50% mark last month. Data by Statistics Korea shows the employment rate for women in their late 20s and early 50s rose the most, and the rate for those between the ages of 25 and 29 was over 70%. That means that roughly 7 out of 10 women who are able to work have a job, and it surpasses the employment rate for men in the same age group. Government policies encouraging flexible working hours and training for mothers seeking to re-enter the workforce are seen as the main reasons for the increase, especially for women in their 50s. The employment rate for women between the ages of 50 and 54 increased the most of women in other age groups. The rate stood at around 65% last month, growing nearly 2 percentage points from the same period last year. A researcher with the Hyundai Economic Research Institute, Ko Seung-yeon, told Seoul-based Yonhap News the main reason the economic participation rate of women in their 50s rose more sharply than that of other age groups was due to the prevalence of low-quality jobs, and she emphasized the need to shift the focus on quality rather than the quantity of jobs provided. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
While the government may cut all employee bonuses as state-run enterprises starting next year as part of efforts to address problems with lax management and skyrocketing debt. This proposal was included in a revised manual on the assessment of public enterprises distributed at a recent public institution management meeting. The government says, depending on the outcome of the evaluation process, a partial cutback could be implemented, but they are leaving the door open for the possibility of a broad cut. The government has also increased the number of institutions that will be evaluated for debt reduction plans from 10 to 119. Well, Hyundai Motor Group has set a new sales record in the U.S. in the first half of the year. The Korean auto giant announced Tuesday that the sales of Hyundai vehicles in the first 6 months of the year stood at more than 364,000 units, up nearly 1% on year. Kia Motors sold in excess of 297,000 units, which is the highest amount since the company came into the U.S. market in 1994. The company says record-breaking sales last month contributed to the stellar first-half performance. And now on to the latest from the World Cup. Argentina booked its ticket to the quarterfinals in Tuesday's action, beating Switzerland 1-0. The game was scoreless and seemed bound for penalty kicks until Angel Di Maria scored in the 118th minute, sending Argentina to the next round. Now, Argentina will now face Belgium, who beat the U.S. 2-1, with all goals coming after extra time. Belgium's Kevin De Bruyne scored in the 93rd minute, and Romelu Lukaku netted Belgium's second goal in the 105th minute. The United States' Julian Green managed to score just 2 minutes later, but it was too late to change the outcome of the match. And the top 8 teams have now all been decided. The quarterfinals take place on Friday and Saturday. Now, on a different note, Israel is on the hunt for 2 suspects it says are members of Hamas and have conducted dozens of airstrikes as well. Well, emotions are still very raw as Israelis bury 3 of their own. Our Son Jung-in has more.
Tens of thousands of mourners attended a funeral in the central Israeli city of Mudin, where the bodies of 3 teenagers who were kidnapped and murdered while hitchhiking home were laid to rest on Tuesday. The bodies were found on Monday evening, more than 2 weeks after the trio went missing in the West Bank. Israel says the Palestinian militant group Hamas was behind the killings, a charge Hamas has neither confirmed nor denied. In a televised address Tuesday night, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the nation, Hamas is responsible, Hamas will pay, Hamas will continue to pay for the kidnap and murder of the 3 young men. He also outlined a 3-pronged response to the incident, taking the murderers into custody, continuing to strike Hamas targets in the West Bank, and expanding the operation in Gaza as necessary. The Israeli Air Force carried out more than 30 airstrikes on Hamas in response to rocket attacks against its southern communities and warned of stepped-up military activity if the rocket fire continues. Outside the Middle East, the incident has spurred strong reactions from the U.S. and in Europe. British Prime Minister David Cameron has called the teens' deaths an appalling and inexcusable act of terror, while U.S. President Barack Obama similarly condemned what he called a senseless act of terror against innocent youth. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Well, over in France, in an unprecedented move, its police have detained former President Nicolas Sarkozy for questioning over suspicions he used his power illegally. Now, he was grilled on whether he had pursued inside information from a judge related to a 2007 probe on his campaign funds in exchange for the promise of a distinguished role in Monaco. Investigators are also called in the high-ranking judge in question, in addition to a second judge and Sarkozy's lawyer. Sarkozy called the charges politically motivated, and they are being seen as a significant blow to the former leader's ambitions for another presidential run in 2017. Well, it's time now for our daily arts and culture segment, and let's bring in our Im Yoon-hee for the latest update. Good afternoon to you, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon.
So what do you have for us today?
So today we'll be looking at a ballet, but it's the star of the ballet that really took the spotlight. Now, it's no new news that Kang Soo-jin is one of the most revered ballerinas here in the country, and she really has put Korea on the map when it comes to ballet.
Right. I mean, arguably, she's the top dancer in Korea, and you know, with so much accomplishments made globally, as well as she's been on various world stages, right?
Right, so she did serve as the principal dancer for Germany's Stuttgart company for almost 30 years. And recently she took up post as the artistic director for Korean National Ballet. And that wasn't enough for her. She's also performing in a ballet version of Madame Butterfly set to stage in just a few days. Take a look.
Madame Butterfly is known to most as an opera by Puccini, but it's now been translated into a ballet, featuring the star Korean prima ballerina Kang Soo-jin. She'll be backed by the Innsbruck Dance Company of Austria, a combination that has proven to be extremely successful in past productions. Kang recently returned to her homeland after nearly 30 years dancing abroad to lead the Korean National Ballet as director.
First of all, as leader of the Korean National Ballet, I have to make sure my team and I don't get injured. The remaining time and energy goes towards preparing this show.
Madame Butterfly the ballet premiered with the Innsbruck Dance Company in Austria last year. Even though it's being presented as a ballet, it still features the same tragic story. Kang's dedication to her character Choo Choo results in a mesmerizing masterpiece that reflects her dancing skills and her passion for love interest Pinkerton. It's shown through the choreography alongside the beautiful music. The 46-year-old is Korea's oldest active ballerina.
Since I was young, I was always sure that before I lose control of my body, I was going to quit. I have too much respect for myself and for ballet. It's important I leave when I do.
Kang is expected to lead the reputable Korean National Ballet through the coming season with her usual grace and charm. But first, her attention is focused on her current production of Madame Butterfly.
Well, Yuni, Madame Butterfly, it's usually known to the general public as an opera. So, it's translated into ballet. Someone must have choreographed this move, right?
Right, so a really interesting story behind that. Actually, the artistic director for the Innsbruck Dance Company actually choreographed this particular ballet for Kang Soo-jin herself, and so they wanted her to be the star, and so this performance is very special to her.
Well, it's not news that, she's a star of a ballet, she's always been the prima donna, but she's taken a new role, a pretty recent role as the artistic director of the Korean National Ballet Company. Now, what kind of strengths does she see in this organization?
Right, so she has been gone for such a long time, so she said it was really nice to come back and see the Korean ballet, the level of dance here, and she said that Korean ballet dancers are very strong when it comes to technique. Now, this is no news, many people have been saying that, but she said that Korean dancers are also very good at classical ballet, and so she's very excited for that, and so hopefully her decades of experience abroad, will really take Korean ballet to the next level.
Well, Kang herself is a very, very accomplished ballerina, needless to say, she's won various awards, right?
Right, so she is actually the youngest and first Asian dancer to go join the group Stuttgart Company, and so that was a very big accomplishment for her. She also was bestowed by the German government with the Royal Court Dancer, and that is the highest achievement or honor that you can get in that country for a dancer, and so it was a very big accomplishment for her, but also for Korean ballerinas as well, and that was in 2007, and after that she has also, accumulated many awards and many recognitions, and so a very decorated dancer.
It was just mind-blowing to learn that she's 46 years old already, and she seems perfectly in control of her body and her performance. But she did say that she would leave when time has come, and she's only set to perform this performance for a few days. Now, is she going to stop with the performance and focus on her artistic director's role?
Right, so initially she was actually slated to perform at Madame Butterfly until 2016, but she did take up the post and she decided to put that as priority, so she canceled all abroad performances, but she did keep the performances in Korea, like Madame Butterfly, which is going on this year. And next year she is planning on performing another performance at the Stuttgart Ballet, and in 2016 she plans on retiring, sadly, and she has a very special performance planned for then. So she has quite a big behind her, but also a lot on her plate as well still.
Right, right. She has a lot on her plate, and the Korean National Ballet Company has, a bright future, I think, and we'll all be looking forward to her, more of her feats, as well as the Korean National Ballet's developments.
We all will be looking out for that.
All right, thank you, Uni, for that.
Always a pleasure.
Good afternoon. Although it seems like it's going to be a nice sunny day, we're actually expecting some sudden showers here in the central region throughout the day and monsoon rains down south. And currently the level of fine dust is high here in the capital, and it's very hot right now, but there is light breeze to it, so you aren't likely to feel sticky and hot as yesterday. Now going over to our temperature readings, Seoul will top out at 30 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will both top to 26 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops over to 23, while Dokdo and Mangungang both tops into the mid-20s. And as for the weather conditions at the World Cup in Brazil, fortunately, there's no rain in the forecast for the next game. However, it will be hot with the highs in the upper 20s. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Kanyang.
Well, thanks, Michelle, for that. And that's just about all from me at this hour. And I'll check back with you at 4 p.m. Korea time.